Hi guys, it's Lara. Thanks for watching and welcome back to my channel. So I'm back from vacation and our house guests left, so I'm back to my regular filming schedule. And today it's gonna be again a chatty video, aka tea with Lara, although technically today it's smoothie with Lara. I have here a lovely berry smoothie with mango, so it's homemade almond milk. There is a little bit of coconut yogurt with mango flavor, a few pieces of frozen mango, frozen berries, which is a mix of raspberries, blueberries, there's black currant, red currant, and something else I forgot. And there's a little bit of water so that I would make it a little bit less thick. I threw it in the blender. Ta-da, here's my smoothie. And this is kind of also my lunch replacement, not because I went crazy, but I have a canker sore on the inside of my lip right here. And that thing is just not going away because I wear braces and one of the brackets has this really long pointy end, and you probably know where this is going. It already happened to me in the past. The place where the canker sore is, it just sucks. And sometimes when I'm not extra careful, or like when I sneeze, or I don't know, when I chew my food, sometimes the bracket literally digs in the middle of the canker sore, and that is so freaking painful. The whole thing was so swollen that one night it would even wake me whenever I would turn my head on the right side of the pillow. It just, yeah, it's not enjoyable. And that's also one of the reasons why I didn't want to have tea, because warm beverages make it worse. It just hurts. And even though I've been eating my regular diet for the past few days, today after I had my oats in the morning and my tea, I felt extra whiny. So I have decided to make my life a little bit easier. So today it's a huge exception. Normally I have a really rich food, usually legumes and rice and stuff like that. But I'm whiny, so I'm having a smoothie, because having liquid food that is on the top of that also cold makes my mouth feel less painful. So enough with this whining. This was probably the most annoying, the longest intro in the history of YouTube. Why are we here? So today I want to discuss 9 to 5, which refers, for those of you who are not native speakers, to a regular working schedule, usually Monday to Friday. It doesn't have to be necessarily that, and usually like office hours, but it does not have to be literally 9 to 5. And I'm explaining this because we are here very international. The majority of you guys are from the States, but there is a big portion of people from Austria and Germany. There are also quite a few people from the Czech Republic and from Slovakia and from Sweden, which is wonderful. I think it's great. But I made a poll on Instagram and asked you a couple of questions because I wanted to know your background. And when I asked the first question, whether people work 9 to 5, the majority of people said no. But when I asked further questions, it kind of contradicted the first answer. So I'm going to go through it with you so that you know the numbers as well. So the first question I asked was, do you work 9 to 5 or similar? And 59% said no, which made me kind of curious. So I kept asking. I said, do you work Monday to Friday? 58% said yes. So I was like, maybe it was a language thing. Then I asked further, do you work full-time or part-time? 77% of the people who took part in the poll said yes, so they work full-time. And the last question was, do you work regular hours or shifts at different times of the day? And here we go, 74% said regular hours. So basically, the majority of the people who took part in the poll have 9 to 5 lifestyle, which I kind of figured, because it, when you look around you, most people do. And that was for me very interesting to hear, and I was actually also happy about that, because I'm here kind of to defend the 9 to 5 lifestyle, because I feel like very often it's being frowned upon. People sometimes make fun of it, call it the hamster wheel, and I don't think it's always fair. There are for sure some pros and cons, just like to any lifestyle, but I don't think we should make fun of that, because it's an honest job. It's a nice lifestyle where you know what's going to happen, and even though there are some cons, it does not necessarily have to be a bad lifestyle. And I myself have a very similar lifestyle, or like work schedule. I do work part-time, but my schedule is pretty much something like 9 to 5 regular. And even my husband, he's got a very successful company that he had for now 25 years. he's self-employed, but he's also working 9 to 5 because, call us crazy, we want to stay in business, so we have to adjust to the needs of our clients. So we have to work 9 to 5 as well, even though we are self-employed. So now let's talk about this. All right, so I have written down some notes because if I don't do that, we're going to be sitting here till Christmas, and I don't think you want to spend that much time with me. So the first point I have written down is something we just discussed, that very often people are looking down at 9 to 5 and they're making fun of it. And you hear very often the term hamster wheel. That was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to film this video, because whenever I'm watching my favorite creators, I always watch the advertisement because I want to support them. And there was very often this advertisement where the guy literally was talking about, I want to help you to break out of the 9 to 5 hamster wheel. And I was like, don't call it that. There is nothing wrong with that. So anyway, 9 to 5 is really necessary for services and for institutions where you expect to have some reliable hours, like let's say banks, state departments and stuff like that. I mean, when I'm talking about banks, of course, nowadays pretty much everyone has online banking. But there are still things for which you would have to go to the bank or to certain offices, even though so much can be done nowadays online. And even if these things are being done online, there have to be also some people on the other hand who actually take care of the stuff. And they have to communicate maybe with some other departments and some other offices. And in order for this to be as efficient as possible, which it not always is, admittedly, but in order to make it at least as efficient as possible, they have to have at least somewhat similar working hours. So there is definitely place for 9 to 5 in the world, and I don't just see why it is uncool or funny or just something we should make fun of. And the funny thing is also that many of the people who actually laugh about that are exactly the people who love to go daily to their favorite restaurant or coffee shop, and they expect these places to be open. I mean, how would we feel if we would come home from work and we would go to our grocery store and there would be a little leaflet on the door saying, sorry, was bored, went to the beach, see you tomorrow? That would be kind of weird, right? So there has to be some kind of schedule, something we can rely on, something solid, some structure. In order for the world to function. Otherwise, it will be just chaos. And again, the world is more efficient when we have something we can rely on, because if everything would be random, it would not work at all. I mean, it barely does now. The next point that I have written down is that 9 to 5 kind of fits better to the main structure of our society. I mean, of course, there are jobs that require to have shifts, and thank God for them, and respect to everyone who does that. I've been working shifts and it sucks sometimes. Actually, it sucks most of the time. It's really demanding. I have especially a huge respect for people like nurses or flight attendants. It's a really demanding job. So anyway, the way our society is built is that there are, again, institutions that work certain hours in order for it to be efficient, and there are also children who need to be educated, and schools are open in the morning till afternoon. So it makes sense that there are jobs that are basically having a work schedule at similar times like this, because when people are having children, not everyone has to have children, but when people are having children, it is really wonderful for them to be able to go to work at pretty much the same time when their children are going to school, so that when they come back, they get to spend the time with their children and they get to take care of them and they get to spend the weekend with their children. And of course, not everyone has the luxury. There are people, like I said, nurses, for example, or flight attendants, doctors, I don't know what, that have to work shifts, and it's really tough. I have a huge respect for every parent who is working shifts and taking care of their children, because it is extremely demanding. Anyway, so for this life, like when you have kids, it's nice to have some solid schedule you can rely on, because it's so much easier to plan and to be there for your kids. So it makes definitely sense. Now let's talk also about the social aspect of working 9 to 5, or at least somewhat similar working schedule. So if you work somewhere where your working hours are very similar to the working hours of the majority of people, it's going to be probably a bit easier to find friends or a partner. So that's definitely positive. I'm not saying it can't work otherwise. I used to work as bar manager, which meant for me I went to work at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I went home usually between 3 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the morning. And my two best friends were working 9 to 5, and we still made our friendship work, but we did not get to spend as much time together as we wanted to because it was just not possible. When they were done, I just went to work, and there was only one day we had in common that we had off, which was Sunday. So we usually got to do the stuff on Sunday, and all the other time we texted, sometimes called each other, and that was it. So it's not impossible, but it would have been easier if we had some similar working hours. And same goes for having a partner who has different working hours. I also worked as flight attendant, and that meant working shifts. And let me tell you, that's a pretty lonely life. My social life was basically zero at that point. So if you want me to talk a little bit more about my experience working as a flight attendant, let me know in the comments. So anyway, when I met Jack, I fell in love, and he had this little boy. I knew pretty soon that that was the guy I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And at that time, I was working as a bar manager, and very soon it became clear to me this is not going to work long term if I keep working at night, because I wanted to spend time with them. So I made the decision to change jobs, and it was one of the best decisions I could ever make, because now we've been together for 16 years and we are super happy. It's going to be actually in March, it's going to be 17 years. It's crazy how the time flies. Yeah. So anyway, that's something that needs to be also considered when you're talking about work schedules. So I think that 9 to 5 can be a little bit easier in that sense. Also, I feel that some people think I'm going to be self-employed and I'm going to be able to manage my time however I want to. That is kind of an illusion, because as soon as you start having clients, you will have to adjust to their schedules most of the time. Unless you have some super unique product that is so hard to top, it's going to be pretty difficult to tell them, no, I work whenever I want to, because if you want to stay in business, you have to adjust or at least compromise. So the idea of I'm just going to work whenever is not always realistic. Most of the time, it's just not going to work, even if you're going to be self-employed. I mean, even creators have to have at least some kind of schedule if they want to be successful long term, because your audience wants to have results. They want to have videos to watch, and if they keep coming too randomly, it might drive your audience away. Plus, creating videos also means you need to consider the filming time. Even if the video is going to end up being just 10 minutes, it's usually much more time to film that, especially when it's creative videos like I do for my DIY channel. Sometimes 10 minutes video means like 3-4 days work, and it's just crazy. It's a lot of work in the background. And even chatty videos like that, I refilmed certain sections a couple of times already because I didn't like the way I expressed it. So that time needs to be considered, then the time for editing. So I can't just decide at 6:30, oh, I'm going to publish a video at 7 today. Let's film it quickly. It's just not going to work. So it is not that easy. So even where you have the illusion of, I'm just going to work whenever, or the person works whenever, it might not be true. And then I also wanted to talk shortly about the pros and cons of both being self-employed and being employed. Now, I am employed, which is a wonderful thing, especially in Austria, because we have an amazing social system and a great healthcare system. I don't have to worry about anything. So when my tooth would hurt, I go to the dentist. It's already being paid for. When I would get seriously sick, my healthcare will cover it no matter what I get. The only things that the healthcare doesn't cover is things that are like more cosmetic. So for example, when I get some issue with my teeth and it's medical, it's paid for. When I go and have my dental hygiene, that's the only thing I have to pay for. That's like this. Or when I had my breast explant surgery, that was not a thing where I was in some kind of life-threatening situation. It was more cosmetic, so I had to pay for it myself. But if one of my implants were ruptured, the insurance would have covered it. So just to give you an idea. And I think it's great to be employed because I know that I'm going to earn a certain sum each month. I know I have the obligation to work certain working hours and I can plan my time around it. And it's really nice because I know it's basically the same every month. The only advantage I have is that my boss is my own husband. So when I want to go in the morning to my ballet classes, I can do it as long as I come and stay a little bit longer in the afternoon. And unless we have some meeting where I have to be, I can kind of schedule my time pretty much freely. However, I still try to make it as regular as possible for various reasons, social reasons, and also efficiency. And because I'm also managing the office, I also have to do certain things regularly, and it just makes sense to be there at certain times. So again, this is not that I can't just say, I'm not going to work at all this week. I'm going to come next week and work double hours. Not going to work. Not possible. Now, being self-employed is a great thing in terms of you can, if you work hard and if you're really good, and also partially if you're lucky, because that sometimes also has to play a certain role, you can earn more than when you're being employed, but you also have more risks, especially if you have employees. So for example, Jack has his company and there are there's a certain number of employees, which means there is a certain number that he has to pay to the people, then their health insurance, then there are certain fees that he needs to pay each month to the state, to the financial institution here, they call it Finanzamt, which is basically the equivalent to IRS, and so on and so on. And you have to earn all this money first before you take even a single buck from the company, and that's a lot of pressure. And then there are these clients, so you have to take good care of them, and sometimes they will need something last minute and you have to stay longer, and no one's gonna pay you that time basically. So there are pros and cons for both, and I think it's great that both these variation exists. And I think before someone decides whether they want to be self-employed or employed, they have to consider all these things. Like, am I the person who likes taking risks and who is comfortable with a lot of pressure? Or am I more the person who rather likes having a certain schedule and something reliable, even though there are limits to it? I would say a combination of both. So I work part-time and I'm doing YouTube on the side. I'm not earning a lot with YouTube, but I earn a little bit something, especially with my DIY channel, and that's just wonderful because this is something I'm very passionate about. Here, the things I earn, I can probably afford a lunch a month, and that's it, if it's a cheap restaurant. But I'm not complaining. I don't mind because this is also my hobby and it's great that I get to earn at least something with it anyway, so I'm grateful for that. But here I have the aspect of kicking my own butt, kind of taking a risk and investing something when I don't even know if something's gonna come back, because no matter how hard you perform, if the algorithm decides it hates you, you're screwed. So that also needed to be discussed. And I think whatever you choose or whatever you prefer, there is nothing wrong with neither of these working schedules, be it working at night or working a job where you get to work shifts or working 9 to 5. I think there is place for all of these schedules, and I think we should not make fun or look down at any of these. And the last thing I wanted to say is an example why not being reliable as a business and working whenever can be really damaging. So let's say, again, if a restaurant would be a place where they would suddenly decide, oh, we had only 3 customers for lunch, let's go home, nothing's gonna happen. But then imagine there would be a group of tourists that would come at 5 o'clock and they would stand in front of a closed restaurant, even though on the webpage it says we're open till 9 o'clock. It's just an example. So I guess they would not be happy and they would not recommend the restaurant, and word could get around and such business could close pretty quickly. And it actually, something like that happened to a boxing gym where Jack used to take boxing classes, and he went there to practice and to spar. And it was a gym, it was a combination of a regular gym where you could work out with weights and there were some machines, and then there was this boxing gym part. And the owner, he was a super nice guy, but he did not understand that when it says on the door, I open at 8 o'clock in the morning and we're open till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that you have to stay open. Otherwise, you will drive your customers away. And that basically happened because sometimes he did not feel like there were enough people, so he would close earlier, and people kind of got tired of that, including Jack, and they just quit the membership and they closed. So it's really important to consider that. So anyway, I hope that this whole video made sense. Again, I think we should not look down on the 9 to 5 working schedule, not because I have a similar work schedule, but because I feel like there is nothing wrong with it and it makes perfect sense in some situations, and it can be really beneficial for some people, especially for people who have children. On the other hand, I think there is nothing wrong with not wanting that. 100% not. I think everyone should choose, if they can, what they want. But let's keep in mind, some people don't have the luxury. So again, making fun of that, not gonna be nice. So these were my thoughts on 9 to 5. And now we can continue the discussion in the comments. So you can tell me, do you agree with me? Or is there something that you see differently? Do you work 9 to 5? Do you work shifts? Are you self-employed? Do you even care? So I'm really looking forward to the further discussion in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching. I love you guys so much and see you soon. Bye.